You know when people say you need a funnel, a fancy sales page, ads, and a huge audience to make sales? So you're trying everything. You're posting more, consuming more trainings, except the one thing that actually creates connection and conversions. You host a workshop thinking it's the finish line. You get people there, you deliver value, you make the offer, and then nothing. But what if the workshop was never meant to be the end? What if it was always designed to be the first step in the sales conversion system? Because once you see that shift, selling stops feeling heavy, it stops feeling awkward, it starts feeling aligned, and you stop feeling spammy. Hi, I'm Kristin Dronchi, founder of the Kingdom Business Revolution, a movement equipping Holy Spirit-led women entrepreneurs to build businesses by God's design, disrupt darkness, advance the kingdom, and create an eternal impact without being a slave to social media. And I want to tell you today why this episode matters. I recently hosted what I like to call an activation event, a workshop designed not just to teach, but to activate conversations, because conversations lead to conversions. That single event sold out a one-on-one advisory spot, opened multiple sales conversations, and set me for $8,000 in recurring revenue already secured for January 2026. Not because I ran ads, not because I have a massive audience, and not because I forced a pitch. It happened because I understood one thing. Activation events are one of the most underlooked, underestimated, and wildly effective conversion events. And most Kingdom women in online business don't even realize how powerful that actually is. Welcome to the Kingdom Business Revolution podcast. We are redefining faith in online business to empower you, the Kingdom woman, to create, grow, and launch a profitable, impactful, and scalable business by God's design without being a slave to social media and without sacrificing your faith and values. You're not afraid to rock that status quo and be part of a kingdom revolution. Armor up with Ephesians 6 and put on the full armor of God, because you are a warrior for the kingdom, and He is going to use you and your online business to do some pretty amazing things here on this side of heaven. Hey, welcome back to the Kingdom Business Revolution podcast. A quick invite before we dive deeper into today's conversation. If you are a Holy Spirit-led woman called to entrepreneurship and you want more traffic and consistent sales without needing a big team, massive audience, or complicated funnel, come join the activation room. This is where we close the gap between the information and knowledge that you have and finally activating so you can reach consecutive 3K and 5K months that allow you to have the firm foundation to scale. The activation room is where I teach women how to activate their offer, message, and audience instead of collecting more information. It's only $37 right now as a founding member, but the price goes up to $49 in January. The link is in the show notes, but you can go to go.kristindronchi.com/activation/room. That's go.kristindronchi.com/activation-room. Let's get into today's conversation. Here's something most Kingdom women in online business don't realize, that live activation events, one of those, our workshops, convert faster than almost any other marketing strategy. Not because they're flashy, but because they collapse the gap between stranger and client. The gap you're trying to close with all of the posts you're making on social media, your emails, and content. A workshop can close that gap in 1 hour or less when done effectively. And yet, most Kingdom women are sitting on one of the most powerful list building and sales driving tools they already have, and they're not using it. And today, we're going to change that. Activation events are one of the most overlooked conversion tools we have access to, especially for Kingdom women who don't want to hustle, who don't want to shout and dance for attention or battle the algorithm. I started to teach activation events when I started to see that these long 5-day, 9-day launch strategies just weren't really going to be a consistent strategy for me in 2025. My little one is now 4, and he has started to require a lot more attention, and we've been transitioning into doing homeschooling throughout the day, learning the alphabet. Who am I kidding? He knew the alphabet when he was like 2.5. But learning numbers, the math, and doing all of the things. And oh my goodness, he's almost starting to read. It is so amazing to see how these little ones transition. So I knew that these longer live launch strategies that I was using wasn't going to be feasible in this season of my life. As well as sitting in rooms with other 6, 7, and 8-figure entrepreneurs, I started to see that these smaller lives that they would show up for one day, these masterclasses, these workshops, were converting. They were converting as well as they were allowing them to have sales conversations. And when you can have more conversations, those conversations lead to more conversions. So I started to really do some research into these smaller events. What made them tick? What type of masterclasses actually converted? And what that formula was. And I realized that there was something to this, especially in 2025, when we have gone through that trust recession, when the currency of today's market is trust. These activation events and the formula that I put together exponentially increased authority and trust in me and my clients using them a lot quicker. And it allowed for people to raise their hand in a comfortable way to say, hey, I'm interested, which allowed me to start to have a conversation with them. Earlier this month, I hosted a larger activation event where I decided to share my Business by God's Design 30-day revenue activation system. I started to promote 72 to 48 hours, and I knew that I probably wouldn't have 100, 200 people show up like we originally were taught to host a live launch, host one of these strategies, and make sure that you have a good number of people showing up at these events. I had 25 people raise their hand for this masterclass and say, yeah, I'm interested. 5 showed up live to the activation event itself. That's a 20% show up rate. And then when I made the offer, which we'll talk a little bit about later in this podcast, I opened 2 spots to my one-to-one coaching program. And one of those people that showed up live after having conversations with them purchased that. That was a 20% attendee to buyer conversion, and then a 4% overall conversion because one purchased out of 25 registrants for my specific offer. But I was able to make customizable offers to a few other people as well based on those conversations that I had. A 20% show up rate is normal and it could be probably improved, but it's not very common right now, where business owners are saying that they're struggling to get people to show up live because attention is fractured. Free events are sometimes treated as optional. When I teach my clients how to use activation events, there's things that we do in order to activate their audience and activate their email list to get them to show up live. The 20% attendee to buyer conversion tells me that the offer was relevant, the message landed, and trust was present. That is the power of these activation events. And from a business strategist lens, it told me that the workshop was doing its job, my offer was converting, my authority was landing. And that one activation event allowed me to step into 2026 with guaranteed $8,000 in reoccurring revenue. So when you think you need to have a big email list or a big launch or a big masterclass, that is far from it. But the problem is that Kingdom women in business who are hosting these incredible workshops or masterclasses deliver massive value, and then they either do nothing or they jump straight into a pitch that feels forced. And they're leaving money on the table or forcing something that doesn't feel good. And there is a better way. These activation events work because they collapse the gap between stranger and client faster than almost anything else. So many of you are sitting on one of the most powerful list building and sales driving tools in your business, these activation events, and you're not fully using it. So today we're going to be changing that. These activation events work great by themselves, but they also work even better when you merge it with a collaboration strategy on the front end that brings in high quality leads that are warm, that already know, like, and trust you through authority osmosis with this collaboration strategy you participated in or you hosted yourself. And then on the back end of that, run an activation event. Coupled together, this exponentially increases your authority, that know, like, and trust factor, establishes you as the expert in your niche, in your market, and brings people closer to what you have to offer. And the activation event gets people to raise their hand and say, yes, this is what I need. For that kingdom woman in business who thinks that she needs more followers, more time, more confidence, more tech, more structure before you can sell. My friend, you don't. What you do need is connection and activation. And nothing creates that quite like activation events. So why do these workshops, these activation events convert even when nothing else does? First, they create instant relevance. A workshop forces you to choose a specific topic. And when I give someone my masterclass framework, that's the first thing, to pick a topic that goes deep. We're not going wide with your full strategy, your full method. We are going deep with one specific topic so that when your ideal client signs up, they're saying, yeah, that's me. I need this. Clarity is the connection and specificity converts. Second, these activation events position you as the guide, not the guru. People don't want to be lectured. We've all been in those launches or those webinars where we feel that we can't even connect with the presenter. An activation event lets people experience your coaching, your thinking, your discernment. They get to experience you, not just hear about it. Third, they build trust in real time. You get to answer questions. You get to read the room, adjust on the fly, respond to what people actually need, not what you think they need. And trust built in 1 hour can outperform months and months of nurturing. Now, let me put a pro tip in here. Your level 10 ideal client, your perfect fit buyer, doesn't need months and months of nurturing. That's what makes these activation events so powerful. And finally, they attract aligned people, even if your audience is small. These activation events aren't designed to go viral. They're designed to go deep. You don't need 100 signups. Look, I just explained that to you. If you get them, great, that's amazing. But really, you just need 10 people, 15 people, 25 people who are actively struggling with that same problem that you solved. Going deep in these activation events beats volume every single time. This year, I went live either in the Facebook community during one of my Tuesday talks, or I did one of these longer activation event strategies. I sold something every single time, whether it was bringing someone into the activation room or bringing someone in as a higher ticket client in the Kingdom Business Revolution Advisory, where they had customizable support to fit where they were at. In a moment here, I'm going to go over why activation events need to be in your 2026 strategy. But before you do, this is exactly why I built the activation room. If this is resonating with you, you don't need more strategy, you need activation. And inside the activation room, we installed the fundamentals that actually create predictable growth that allow you to bring consistent 3K, 5K sales in on a monthly basis. It has the authority building system, the audience growth system, and your sales conversion system, which a piece of that sales conversion system is these activation events that we're talking about. It's how Kingdom women build consistent 2K, 5K months without duct taping their business together. It's $37 right now, and the price is going to increase in January. The link to grab your seat as a founding member before the price goes up is in the show notes. The biggest mistake people make with these workshops is, well, they're not using the activation event strategy, but they treat them like content. Workshops are not content. They are conversion moments. And they're not the end of the sales funnel. They are at the beginning of it. Workshops, activation events are trust builders, and it's one of the fastest way to fill your offers in 2026. And if you host these activation events like you've seen 2020, 2021 webinars, they're not going to work. But if you treat them like a community moment, a coaching moment, a transformational moment, and as the beginning piece of your sales conversion system, you'll never look at marketing the same way again. These activation events are the beginning of your sales conversion process. They lead to the conversations you need in order to have sales. You don't need a giant audience. You don't need a funnel. You don't need a huge launch runway. I told you in the beginning of this episode, within 48 hours, I decided to put this together and put it out there. A simple, well-positioned activation event that goes deep on a specific topic allows you to create a space where people can raise their hand and say, yes, this is me. I want help with this thing. It also gives you real-time feedback on your message. Content you can repurpose everywhere. I'm taking what I did and I'm creating a podcast episode around that. And it also gives you clarity about what people actually want. And when you start to show up live in these activation events, you get more confidence in your offer, in your ideas. You have a proof of concept for bigger offers, and you're actually bringing in revenue. No other conversion event gives you so much insight, so much trust building, and momentum that fast. So when you're mapping out next year and you want to be more visible, you want to have more aligned leads so that you can have more data to interpret and bring in sales that feel fun, an activation event might be the move that unlocks your next level. And if you're interested in how to put these activation events together so you can have more conversations that lead to sales, join the activation room. It's only $37 if you join before January. And in January, I will be releasing the full-blown activation event step-by-step process. So you'll be able to get in and get that and start planning your 2026 with these amazing activation events. So now that we know what this conversion event is like, how do we sell after this workshop without feeling gross or pushy? Now, I do want to say that hosting an activation event is step one. What happens after is where the real work and the real momentum gets to kick in. And honestly, most people completely forget about this part. I don't know if they fumble this part or if they just don't want to do the work. They either jump straight into a pitch or they avoid selling altogether because they don't want to feel salesy and they end up leaving money on the table. So we're going to bring it to the middle ground. I found a way that actually converts and still feels really good. The main point of having these activation events is to get the person that's ready to raise their hand. And once they are in the room with you, that trust is established and developed, and it leads them closer to saying, yes, I need what you have to offer. So at the end of the event, you're going to make a call to action. You're going to let them know what you have to offer, and there's different nuances. This podcast episode isn't how to make an offer. There's different nuances if you have group coaching or if it's one-on-one. We're not going through that right now. If you want my help, you can definitely have my help putting together one of your first activation events. Join the activation room or reply back to this podcast episode or this email, send me a DM, and we can talk about what a one-off power hour session would look like to put together an activation event specifically for you and your offer. So first, you want to have the event. Second, you want to talk about and weave your offer into what you're doing. And at the end, you're going to have a call to action on what you want them to do if they're interested. And this call to action needs to lead to having a conversation with them, okay? You get to start to have conversations, which leads into the Steward It Well Power Hour that I teach inside the activation room. Because stewarding your business well, your potential ideal clients well, and having conversations with them that lead to relationships is what is going to allow you to make sales on a daily and weekly basis. We have moved into a relationship-based marketing era. Gone are the days where you can put an offer out and someone says, yes, that's me, I'm going to buy it. The buying decision for our ideal clients have lengthened. They're taking a longer decision to discern if this is for them, if they want to invest. And it's no fault of your own. We're in, like I said, a trust recession where trust is a currency and you get to build the trust through these activation events, which allows them at the end to raise their hand, to take a step further, to have a conversation with you. Once the event is over, you're going to want to send the replay email with that clear next step. People are busy. They forget. Most won't watch the replay unless you give them a reason to and remind them. The replay email should say something like, here's what we covered, here's why it matters, and here's your next move. The key here is to give them momentum and to start conversations. Don't add pressure. Then send a follow-up, and this email works amazing because it flips the power dynamic. You're not saying, buy this thing. You're saying, here's what I saw in the workshop, and here's what tells me about what you need next. This email needs to be personalized, intimate, positions you as an actual mentor and someone that can help them. Something like if you are nodding along during the last part of that workshop, there's a good chance that this is what you need. Or if you drop that fire emoji when I ask this question, there's a good chance that this offer is what is going to help you solve that problem. This email almost always triggers replies, responses, and most importantly, conversations. And if you are a client of mine, you always hear me say that if you want to have more sales, you need to have more conversations. Now, those that already responded from the masterclass, you're going to be having conversations in the DMs with them or via email. Third, I want you to drop a value-heavy email that bridges your offer. What were you offering? So this email is going to connect the dots. The one that helps your audience understand why your offer exists and who it generally is for. Something along the lines of, hey, here's the problem you have. Here's why. And in this workshop was just the beginning. This is how we fix it for real. This is where you get to talk about that bigger transformation, the support system, how you work, why this just isn't a quick fix, or why this matters now. This is you teaching while you're selling and reminding them about what you have to offer. And the last email should read like an invitation, not a pitch. Something like, if this workshop, this event gave you clarity, imagine what 6 months of this would look like. This is what working together would actually give you. And then you get to break it down, what they get, what changes when they do work with you, what's possible, and how the container supports them. You don't need fake urgency or fake scarcity. You just get to be honest and truthful, because when you delivered a great activation event, the trust is already high, and those that want it are going to step inside the container. And lastly, close the loop with a final "if you want me" email. This is the message that shows maturity in your leadership and that there is no pressure. Simply saying, if now isn't the right time, I'm still here from you. I'm still here cheering you on and support you. Whenever you're ready, the door is open. People buy from safety, not from pressure. And this email proves that you are safe to buy from, that they are safe on your email list, that they know when they have a conversation with you, it's not going to be a salesy conversation. People know when they have a conversation with me, we're going to have a conversation. Like we're sitting down at a coffee shop. I'm going to figure out what your problem is and how I can support you. And then ask if you're interested in hearing what that next step is going to look like. It's about holding the door open, clearly, confidently, warmly, because someone shows up for your activation event. They're raising their hand, they're telling you they're curious. And if you lead well through that activation event, curiosity becomes clarity. And clarity turns into conversations, and conversations turn into paid clients. So if you're planning your next workshop, I want you to do this. Pick a specific promise, not a full-blown A to Z strategy. Be specific. Then choose a single transformation. Have one mindset shift, one result, one new belief that's instilled in them. Teach less, coach more, and make a call to action that's just a natural extension from where you just came from. Here's where we can go deeper. Here's what happens next. It's not forced. It's not awkward. It's just that next step. And then follow up with connection. How can you start to have a conversation with them? Remember, your activation event is not the end. It is the beginning. It's the beginning of establishing relationships with your people. And I think, like I said, this is where many Kingdom women entrepreneurs get it wrong. They think the workshop or the masterclass is the end thing, that end result. Like, I got people to show up. I made an offer at the end. Are they going to buy or not? And if not, okay, done, move on. But that's actually where you're leaving so much money on the table, because here's the truth. The workshop is the beginning of the sales conversation. It's the first step in the sales conversion system. Think about it. When someone shows up to your workshop, they're essentially saying, I'm curious, I'm interested, I have this problem you're talking about, or it's this piece of this bigger problem that I'm talking about that I need to get solved, but that doesn't mean they're ready to buy right there on the spot. Most people need time to process, to think, to let the information settle, and to be able to have a safe conversation to establish a relationship. These activation events create activation and trust and clarity in an hour or less. But the sale often happens in the days after, the conversations after, in the quiet moments when they're reading the emails, when you're having these back and forth conversations, when they're thinking about what you said, when they're realizing, wow, this is exactly what I need. This is the spark. The follow-up and the conversation is the flame, and together that's what creates that fire that leads to sales conversions. So if you haven't ran an activation event, or if you've been treating your workshops as a final destination, I want you to shift that. Start to see them as a powerful beginning to what they actually are, the invitation to a deeper conversation, the first step in a relationship that leads to transformation. Because when you approach it that way, everything changes, and these activation events become more effective, your follow-up becomes more intentional, and your sales, they become so much easier. So here's what I want you to take away from this conversation today. Activation events, workshops, masterclasses, even 5-minute lives where you show up in your Facebook community aren't about selling. They're about serving deeply enough that the selling becomes obvious. They help you get seen. They help your message land. They build real connection in this relationship-based marketing era. It allows you to be a human first. I'm so excited about this, the Be a Human First framework. It's something that I will definitely get out to you as soon as it's created. But that's all you need to do is be a human first. Establish those relationships. And that Be a Human First framework, part of that is in these activation events. You don't need a big audience, a polished brand, a perfect funnel. You need to take that faith-filled step of obedience forward, have a deep topic that resonates with your level 10 ideal client, and roughly an hour or so. And remember, if the activation room is for you, it's $37 a month right now. The price increases in January. Grab your spot at the link in the show notes. That's it for today, friends. Real quick before you go, if this podcast has blessed you in some way, the number one way that you can thank me is to leave a written review over on Apple Podcasts. And know that there's only one you. Someone is out there waiting to hear from you. They're waiting for your message, your story, and your solution to their problem. You are the expert they're waiting to hear from. I want you to know this, feel this, and most importantly, be this. Never underestimate the impact and power that you have been given through the Holy Spirit. Be blessed, friend, and I'll see you on the next episode.